Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Better Care Forum. I'm Tom Harrell and tonight's theme is the future of long-term care. We are fortunate to have with us three guests tonight. We have Anita Aaron, Executive Director at Lighthouse for the Blind and a member of the Commission on Aging. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you.
We have Brian DeVries, a professor of gerontology at San Francisco State University, as well as a doctor of psychology. And welcome, Brian. And we have Ann Hinton with us, who is Executive Director of the Department of Aging and Adult Services for the City and County of San Francisco. Welcome. Brian, could you start us out with an overview of the issue of aging and disability in America?
Aging's certainly becoming an issue that's garnered a lot more of attention, both academically as well as certainly politically and on lots of other domains. They estimate now that probably 13% of the North American population is 65 and older, and upwards of 1 in 5 are likely to be 65 and older by the year 2020.
Is that true of California? I mean, does California mirror the national statistics, or are we a younger or maybe a little bit older population?
Overall, we're pretty close to the national average, but we tend, in so many other ways, like California, tend to be on the forefront of that. So we have some pockets, certainly within California, that have a much denser population of those 65 and older.
Mm-hmm. And Anita, the Commission on Aging, what is its primary responsibility?
Well, the Commission on Aging is a vehicle set up to be the recipient, if you will, of federal funds from the Administration on Aging that funds an array of programs for seniors. So our charge is to look at where are the gaps in services to seniors and come up with programs that are then administered by the Department of Aging and Adult Services for seniors and people with disabilities.
How are those decisions arrived at? Is that done by the Commission with public input, or are there some kind of federal or state or perhaps city mandates that tell you how the money is to be spent?
Well, first you have to consider that you're in San Francisco. So in the San Francisco system, we have a public hearing about paper clips, as we read about. So yes, there's the federal government prescribes some programs they want to see, the state weighs in, and then we at the city level look at what we really believe is essential too. So it's a number of pots of money put together. The commission was initially set up to oversee the federal piece of the funding.
And Anne, have you seen any change in the sort of demographics or the look, if you will, of the aging population in San Francisco or the Bay Area?
Oh, I think so. I mean, in the last 30 years, there certainly is a real drive, and there certainly are more folks who are living longer and living at home. Mm-hmm. It's always been the case that people have wanted to live at home, but
sure.
in years ago, there was not really that option in terms of a lot of care. I remember working in a nursing home when I was in my 20s and talking to people there who had given up their apartments, and really when I was talking to them, realizing that they could be back and living independently, but all of that was gone for them, and so they couldn't. These days, the world has changed considerably, and so we're living in a community that has a lot of services available, so that's changed. We also have a much more diverse older adult community than
sure.
we probably have ever had before, which is very great for our community. Mm-hmm. It can be challenging at times in terms of delivering services in a really appropriate, culturally appropriate way, but nonetheless is good for our community.
Right. I'm sure funding is always an issue, and we will talk about that soon. But in addition to that, are there any other kinds of structural problems that make it more difficult in a city like San Francisco, as say to a city like perhaps Phoenix, Arizona, or somewhere? I know we have some unique advantages here. Are there any unique disadvantages that the department has to deal with?
Well, you know how it is. Sometimes what's a plus can also be the thing that makes life difficult.
Right.
Yes. So I mean, one of the wonderful things about San Francisco is that there have been created very creative programs for older adults. We've also had the advantage here of learning from younger folks about things that assist them in their daily lives that we can use for older adults who have chronic care needs. Mm-hmm. At the same time, because we have such an array and diversity of services, we sometimes we fumble the ball sometimes on making sure that people get information about all the things that are available to them. So we're really working right now on trying to create a network of services, first of all, and also having entry points for people so that people can get that full, the full breadth of what's out there.
Now, O'Brien, in your opinion, do other parts of California, much less the country, replicate the attempts here in San Francisco to provide a pretty comprehensive set of solutions so that people can live independently if possible? Or, again, are we kind of on an island unto ourselves?
Well, the island, though, is I think held up in esteem in lots of other places, and I think appropriately that San Francisco can rightly pride itself, on that forefront of so many issues. Like, for example, with AIDS caregiving, that there was, dozens and dozens of agencies that had developed to provide care for those living with HIV and AIDS, and that became modeled in lots of other communities around the country. And OnLock also has served as a model for lots of other communities, as well as an agency, the Family Caregiver Alliance, here centered in San Francisco, that offers services and support for those providing care for a family member. Mm-hmm. And that some of their work has ultimately led to sort of federal initiatives. And so I think we have a lot to be proud of, and I think a beacon in a lot of ways.
Now, Anita, I think you mentioned that the Commission on Aging is a means of distributing federal funding and perhaps other funding sources as well. Is there an attempt to coordinate your functions with some of the private services that are in San Francisco or and perhaps in other parts of the Bay Area that attempt to address the needs of the aging community?
Part of what the federal funds are used for are to fund private agencies, so a contracting out process that the city does. For example, for home delivered and congregate meal programs and that kind of thing. So there is a wide array of private contracts as well as the services provided by the city staff. I think one of the interesting things about San Francisco, a statistic I ran across not long ago, was that in the Bay Area we spend up to 14% of sort of the dollars spent on services on seniors and services for disabilities, where other communities may only spend 7% outside of our area. However, San Francisco spends a lot of that money on institutional care as opposed to community living options, which seems a little out of step with what you would expect from us. There's a lot of controversy about just how the money should be spent.
Is there a controversy over the notion of independent living as opposed to some advantages people may perceive of a more institutional setting? Or is it just the fact that we have a history of institutional settings in San Francisco and there's kind of not nostalgia is not quite the right word, but we already have the institution and okay. But I'm just curious, is this, again, kind of a San Francisco-centric split, or is this a debate that is in the country as a whole, the difference between those two models?
Well, it's in the country as a whole to an extent, but here, the facility that is funded by the city, Laguna Honda Hospital, is one of is I think the largest skilled nursing facility in the country. So again, maybe that should be in Texas, where they do everything bigger. I don't know. But so I think the dilemma is it's some of each. I believe that people in San Francisco believe they're doing the right thing by having that ultimate safety net for seniors. And it's our job to educate them that there are other ways that people might actually prefer to be in their homes with the services they need brought in, that there may be other models that people actually prefer to have, and that we need to do a better job of educating people on that.
And I'm curious how your department has responded over the years to the changes in the aging population. We heard the persons with AIDS, for example, or HIV, or perhaps immigrant families who do not speak English as a first language, those kinds of issues. How are those being addressed?
Well, I think one of the things that has happened in our department is that we, 25 years ago, were not funding naturalization, funds for naturalization, and we are doing a little bit more of that now than we were before. Not enough, but a little bit in that direction. So, I think that, so that's one of the things that's happening. also, the department itself has changed radically in the last few years in that we've merged many smaller departments into one department. And that actually has had a great effect on our ability to link programs together, which then really helps consumers to access services in a more unified manner.
Okay.
So that, I think, has been a major, major achievement. We're still, I mean, mergers don't happen without a lot
Sure.
of turmoil, and so
All
we're
right.
still in the midst of working out about all those details and how that can work best. But I think that having one department where people understand that they can go to and get information and potentially receive services either through the department or we have, I think, 47, Anita, is that right? 47 contractors? 44 contractors? So that's a lot of providers in the community offering services. So that's been a real shift. A lot of counties around us had made those kinds of mergers a few years back, and ours just happened recently. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you for the overview of the problem we're facing and some of the attempts we're making in San Francisco to address the issue. When we come back, we're going to have even more discussion of the same issues and get into a little bit more of the challenges facing the city and the state as we attempt to address the aging population. I want to thank you guys for Welcome back to the Better Care Forum. We're discussing problems with long-term care and the aging population. Our guests, Anita and Ann, are still with us, and we're joined by another guest, Jim Illig. He's a health commissioner and chair of the board at IHSS Public Authority. Welcome, Jim, and thank you for joining us. Yeah. We've been talking about some of the unique challenges here in San Francisco and in general about aging across the population in the country and California. And of course, as always, I'm sure funding is in the forefront of people's minds. I'm curious about how that is affecting the delivery of services in San Francisco, and also any other particular challenges that you may be facing in the next couple of years that we need to know about.
Well, the Public Health Department is very much like the Department of Aging and Adult Services in that it shows the commitment of the citizens of San Francisco to both long-term care and health. Because the Public Health Department is $1.1 billion in a city of 750,000 people, of which about $250 million is local money. Now that's similar to the Office on the Aging, which is part of the Department of Aging, where 2/3 of the money is local, and only 1/3 is federal and state. San Francisco really has had a historical commitment to this population.
So I gather what you're saying, that's maybe the ratio is maybe switched in other communities, and so that's great. Now, what is the budget for the Commission on Aging or the Department of Aging and Adult Services?
our department's budget is about $124 million, so a little smaller than the health department, but just as relevant, of course, but just as relevant, right? There you go.
And what are some of the sources for local funding? Is it tax funds or different kinds of special